Next up in the studio, we have a Naarm-based selector who is renowned for his eclectic taste in music. Whilst having the ability to cater to a diverse range of crowds with one of the deeper crates going around, he really cuts his teeth by showcasing underrepresented sounds with nothing off limits. We've got ambient, IDM, reggae, UK garage, jungle, various colours of house and techno, disco, experimental. The list really does go on. With experience playing around the EU, accompanied by his highly sought after record bag, it is no surprise as to why he is able to be placed anywhere on a lineup and nail the brief. Was a very friendly face and knowledgeable asset at Natural Selection Record Store before its closure. I am lucky enough to be speaking to none other than Ed Kent.
Thank you very much for the intro. It's very endearing, so thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. It's been in the works for some time. So
yes, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. So.
Yeah, we have. Well, I remember we were having a conversation. I think it was at the last pitch around it, which was it was obviously bit of an interesting scenario with everything that went down there.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So no, but it's great to sit down with you, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time. But as I said, we usually start the chat with how we met, and I know we're kind of like bouncing some ideas off each other then, but to my memory anyway, we met in Natural Selection at the record store. I remember walking in and you coming to say g'day to me. And I just remember like thinking straight away, I was like, man, this guy's a special guy, you know? Like, yeah.
It's incredibly kind.
You were, you were playing, I think you were playing at like Section 8 or something that
like
night.
Yeah.
And you're prepping your crate.
Yeah.
And I was just like thinking, I was like, wow, this guy's got game.
Yeah. And it was one of those moments where it's like, you've got, particularly at Section 8, we had, the turntables and the CDJs. It was like there was no real reason for me to go and get that record that I was getting because, we were talking about before, like I had actually gone back to the shop, or I was in the shop at the time. I wasn't working, but I was just there because, I was like, I wanted that one record to play, even though I already had the digital. I was like, I just want to play the record because I was playing with Charlie, who, if you don't know, owns or was, at the helm of the Natural Selection shop. And so I guess all the parties we were doing at the time were all, that whole vinyl only thing. And it was more just, I think as a format allowed us to sort of have that really loose back-to-back feel where everyone's sort of jumping on and off, and it was just throwing records around, and it's a very pure way of DJing, I think. So as much as I didn't need to get that record, I was back in there. I was like, I have to grab that one record because I know it's going to go off, and when it's played, as a record and in amongst a bunch of other records, it's gonna elevate it a bit. So so I was in there. I was grabbing. I think we determined before it was Todd Terry's. I think it was Jazz Anthem. I think it was real classic. And I think that was it. We had a good chat. And I think the next time after that probably would have been at a party or something.
I imagine. Yeah, we've ran into each other quite a few times along from that. But I'm very fortunate enough to cross paths with you, and
likewise,
thank you.
It's been a privilege and an honor. So,
and I guess from here, I've been itching to ask you this question, hanging out tonight. But how on earth did you become what you are now? Like, I want to know from the start, like how did you get into the whole music thing? You've spoken about touching on it really early, at an early age, but
it's a funny origin story. I feel like it's quite. I mean, there are a lot of aspects of it that are, I'd say incredibly similar to how other people describe their start when it comes to the world of music, or more specifically electronic music. But I think I've sort of found myself in a weird position in terms of how I've developed and everything that is maybe like sort of semi-atypical for the norm, I guess, just locally speaking anyway. So I grew up listening to a lot of music, as most people did. My parents weren't ever into electronic music. But my dad was always feeding me, you know, Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and that sort of thing. So that was sort of what I grew up with till I was about, probably, I don't know, 9, 10 years old. And I had this older cousin who was super into a lot of different dance music. It was more, you know, like Swedish House Mafia and like the Electro Clash thing and like, you know, Dead Mouse. And there was that sort of thing, I guess. And I sort of saw that, and I don't think it grabbed me immediately when he was sort of introducing me to it. I think it was that sort of thing where you've got an older cousin or an older brother or and someone you look up to, who's maybe a bit older than you, but not old enough to feel like an authority figure. They just are kind of that cool older relative or older figure cousin. That you know, that you really want to emulate in a way.
Yeah.
And I think after sort of, you know, him showing me some music videos and all this sort of stuff, my interest was definitely piqued, and I was sort of thinking, you know, I'm really into this. And it was just something that sort of, I guess, surrounded me in a way until I was sort of maybe 11. And then I literally remember the day I started. It was really weird how not only how sort of lucid and also sort of vivid this image remains in my mind and the feeling of it, but also how quickly it all happened, because I remember it was like back in the day we'd still get, you know, iTunes gift cards and App Store gift cards. I got one for like, I think I won like a competition in school or it was for birthday or something. And I was just on the App Store on my, you know, my dodgy little computer and stumbled across this really quite rudimentary DJ app. And I was just looking at that, and then I remember that literally at the same time I had, you know, another tab open and I was watching Knife Party and Skrillex playing back to back at Tomorrowland. Nice. And I would have been like, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something. Yeah. And I just went like, I saw that video and I was just like, that's what I want to do. There was no thought of, oh yeah, that's cool. And you know, I'd heard some of the music before, so I sort of had, there was some context there, but I didn't really know what that looked like. I hadn't seen what that music looked like or sounded like on that sort of platform before. It was always, you know, here's a music video, here's just a tune, here's whatever. And it was always very insular, which, you know, I enjoy, but it didn't grab me like that video grabbed me, where I saw these people playing this music to these huge crowds.
Yeah, you actually saw the result of the effect that it can have on people.
And I remember I was like, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do with my life. There was no, you know, oh, that's cool. Like, oh, let's try this. It was just like, it was like I unlocked something in my brain. It was weird because I've got, you know, there's a few moments I would say looking back that have really dictated my path and sort of why even today when, you know, you get older and you start facing, you know, other forms of adversity that maybe you're not looking at or not experiencing when you're that old and you're very innocent and young and everything. It's why I've been able to maintain this sort of level of passion and commitment and just like this, why I'm chained to the whole thing, because, it's just coming from those moments. I think at such a young age, you're just, those feelings are so all encompassing, and it really sets you up for what I sort of believe to be and what has been a really enriching and fulfilling future, I guess. So
definitely.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you know, you've had that sort of, you know, exposure. Obviously it's a commercial exposure, and like I feel that most people have had, you know, you don't just instantly step into the, you know, eclectic, you know, underground music scene. Like it's pretty rare that, you know, you might hear people be like, you know, my first artist I listened to was Derek May, or like something
which
like that.
I respect.
Yeah.
I love when I hear that, because I'm like, you know, part of me goes, oh, you know, I wish that was me. I wish I was that person who was immediately like had a dad or a family member who was just like, oh yeah, here's these like Aphex Twin records, or here's like these tapes, here's these like pirate radio recordings. Like that is amazing, but it's just not, that's really uncommon in Australia, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I think if you have a parent or a relative or some sort of figure in your life that is introducing to these things at this age, it's mostly, from my experience, been, you know, the sort of music that was happening in the mid to late, even like early 2000s in Melbourne, or even the 90s. Like a lot of that, you know, things like Bush Records and a lot of that more, you know, warehouse party stuff that is brilliant music, but is very Aussie centric in a way. I don't think we're getting as much of that sort of thing or at least when I was growing up, there wasn't that sort of range where you could be like, when you're in the UK and your older brother could give you some crazy tape and it would change your life. It wasn't as much like that, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If you're talking about showing kids records and music, if you were to show your kid in the future like music right now, what would you show them?
Like if I were to show them a record, I could see them right now.
Yeah.
That's a really good question, because I think being someone who's into, basically every sort of music, there's different moods, and there's different contexts in which certain music makes sense. Like I think if I wanted to show them a club record, I would want to go and take them to a club and say, this is what it looks like and this is what it sounds like, because I think it's very hard to emulate the sort of action that comes from playing and hearing a club record, and the effect that has, particularly when there's such a massive difference between playing a club record, which is designed to be played loud out of a big system that can replicate those frequencies out of a small pair of headphones or Uri boom or whatever, or a little home monitoring setup. I don't know, that's a hard question.
It is a hard question.
I think.
Sorry.
I think, being me, I wouldn't just be like, here's a record. At home, all my records are organized by, label and genre and everything, with little tags on they've got dividers and all that, with little
Nice.
the label ones have little images of the record label's logo on them and all that sort of stuff. So
Wow.
I'd probably take them through labels that right now to me mean a lot, and that I think have also been pretty timeless. But I mean, it's quite predictable, but I'd start probably looking at things like the Hessel audio catalog, because that's music that it was released at a time where there was so much happening and so much brilliant music being released, but it still at that time was so forward thinking, and even now most of those records, if not all of them, are still sounding fresh, and they're still sounding more interesting than anything that's coming out now.
Definitely. You can hear a Hessel audio track from a mile away, can't you? It's so distinct, and it's you can hear it for sure. Ben UFO is just that guy. He's honestly, he's someone that I really look up to as I'm sure many people do.
Definitely. I could sit here for many hours and tell you about how much he's influenced what I do. But
and I think the thing that I love about what he does is he doesn't have any rules with the way he DJs. Kind of as we were talking about earlier, it's just he just plays what he wants really, but it still manages to have elements of tension and release and all of that. He does that in a way that's, it's pretty hard to do that. From a DJ's perspective, particularly when you're swapping genres and things like that. But he's one of the select few that I feel that's able to do it and do it really well. And sometimes I find myself, playing different genres and things like that, and I re-listen to it back, and I'm like, it's kind of like, it's not the same, obviously, but you know what I mean? I'm kind of like, this doesn't really work. He just does it in a really unique way that I don't really know his kind of strategy or the way he goes about it. You might have some more insight, but listening to one of his sets, it just it still flows really nicely, but you'll be like, whoa, I've gone from here to here, and I've listened to these sort of genres in an hour set and been like, what the hell? He takes you on takes you to some really interesting spaces.
Well, I think musically speaking, in order to get to that point, and Ben, if you happen to hear this, I don't wish to put words in your mouth or overinterpret what you're doing, but to me, it comes from a place of really having such intimate connection and experience with every style of music and every genre. I mean, someone like Ben, you look at them and you can see there's roots in disco, there's roots in dubstep, in post dubstep. To me, someone that's really been able to master sort of picking the best from every genre, but also being able to play every genre with such finesse that I think you can almost, in a way, reverse engineer it, and then you can look at it and say, I can take the best bits from each genre and maybe the best, let's say, tendencies from each genre, in a way, and arrange them in a way that not only makes sense, but is kind of giving space for those little, peculiarities that you might see in, I guess, a genre like disco, where you've got a lot of this, original disco stuff that's completely unquantized and that, has these like, classic sort of 80s fade out things going on and all this sort of stuff. Like, I think in order to master the genre hopping thing, I think you have to do your time when it comes to like actually being intimately familiar with, just playing techno and just playing house and like being able to play that music in a way that makes sense. Because once you know structurally how that all works, and I think, particularly when it comes to phrasing and things, but once you know how those records tend to move and you have that feeling, it's just like you can start disregarding these boundaries of like, oh, I shouldn't play this, it's a bit heavy, I shouldn't play this next to this. It's like if you can work your way into that and the tendencies maybe of that particular genre, I think it's a lot easier for you to then make that decision to say, I'm going to go this way. And it's going to make sense because I know how these things operate in their own realm, and I know how those realms can come together and,
intersect.
In a way. So
for sure.
Yeah,
it's a good analysis. I like it.
That's kind of how I guess have looked at what I'm doing, and I guess have in a way mapped out the steps as to get to where I want to get to. Is for me, I feel like the biggest growth I've had has been in messing with these genres maybe, and focusing in on what they mean on their own, and then taking that knowledge and applying it across the spectrum, rather than just being like, oh, here's like a stick of tunes, or here's a record bag, let's just like go wild on throwing things on, which is fun, but it's maybe not going to yield, I should say, the best results.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to your journey of, becoming exposed to music, at what age did you start to, dive into the electronic music and, start DJing and even think about starting to DJ?
So I guess, as I was saying, I was sort of, I was for the first year, I was basically DJing with a laptop and just the trackpad. And I had there was no formal experience. There was no learning. There was no teaching.
What age was this? Sorry.
This was probably when I was 11, I think.
Yeah.
And I was just spent the first year literally DJing with a trackpad and just crossfading, because I was like, I didn't watch any tutorials. I mean, back then there probably were tutorials, but I just didn't. It didn't even occur to me to do that. I just thought, I like the feeling of this and what I'm seeing. So
and like you're 11, like.
yeah. I mean, I didn't even know what like the word tutorial really means at that point. I'm like, what is, I was sort of the perfect mix of curious and maybe a little bit naive, and also quite. I mean, my head sort of, when I'm into something, I just sort of lock in on that, and that's kind of how I've always been. So yeah, I spent probably a year just figuring it out in a way, and then was lucky enough to get a controller for my 12th birthday, and then I played my first gig. I was still 12. It was my friend Ben's 13th birthday, and I rocked up with like this little yellow post-it note stack with all my I for some reason didn't even know what hot cues were and what that whole thing was. I had this controller with like pressure pads on them for hot cues, and instead of doing hot cues, I had all these notes written down of like, what bar of what tune was going to be played at what time. And yeah, since then that was that. Like, I was so incredibly lucky to grow up in a house that was a household that was not only really supportive of what I was doing, but also like actively pushing it forward in a way. Like, my dad from 12 till I could drive, basically almost every weekend would drive me to a house party that I'd teed up. It started with people from school, and it was just I've played this person's party, now this person wants to DJ, and it was all that. And then outside of school, people started to hear about it, and then I got to the point where I was driving all around town and just doing it almost every weekend.
Wow.
And he was driving me like every weekend. Like, he dropped me off at like 6 o'clock, picked me up at like 1 a.m, and that was sort of what I did. So I guess my background is very much as we were saying before, the whole working DJ thing.
Yeah.
In that, my origin is, let's say, quite humble in that I was just trying to please people and put on a party.
Yeah.
The stuff I was playing at the start was, I was like, in my head, I'm like, by the time I'm 16, I want to be this like Martin Garrix kind of like Tomorrowland headliner. So I was playing all this like big room stuff at these like 13th birthdays, and at that time, no one's really got any taste. No one knows what's going on at all. So it was like kind of acceptable, but I sort of learnt pretty quickly that I needed to probably adjust what I was doing to ensure that people were having fun, but also it was making sense in that context. That was sort of how it went.
Sick.
So yeah,
That's such a cool story. Like it's like
yeah, it was good fun.
it's like, you know, you always hear about, and you know, my parents did it for me, you know, driving me to sport all the time. It's like pretty much the same thing, but a different field. But it's really nice to hear that, you know, family was really supportive around it. And yeah, that's such a nice story.
It's really cool because like, I mean, I had, you know, I mean, I was earning all this money from these gigs. Wasn't crazy money. It was very humble at the start. I think my first paycheck was, well, I think Ben paid me well. Like I mustn't speak poorly of Ben. He paid me very well. But I think my first paycheck after that was like $30 and a box of favorites, you know? So it was humble beginnings, you know.
But like, that's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, back then that was like, you know, we could put that towards a hell of a lot of things.
You could do a lot with $30. Like I used to work at a fish and chip shop. And
I did as well. That was my first job actually.
Yeah, that was my first job too. Yeah. And it was, $30 for a shift. Like work 3 hours, $30. And like, I used to like properly save money. Like it was good because, you know, you're living at home with your parents, like you don't have to pay for food or anything like that. You just go to school and work at the fish and chip shop, and you on a Friday night we get paid a little bit more, and on a weekend you get paid a little bit more. It's great. Like it's just just how it was. But I don't know, $30 doesn't really get you too far today.
It doesn't get you too far today, unfortunately. But unfortunately the rate and the fee has gone up, you know, a little bit. But yeah, it was very I guess, you know, it was humble, but also I was just so lucky. I mean, that's not something that just happens to people, you know. I mean, to not only grow up in a safe household and a loving household, but also in one that actually not only allows me to do what I do, but actually supports it, is like, you know, it's the only reason why I'm here at the moment. Because if I wasn't supported like that, I mean, I like to think that I would have persevered and done all that. But I think being able to have almost free reign to go and do these parties and to go to these random houses and meet these people and do all that, that was what instilled within me the confidence to do what I do now, but also the confidence to, you know, go out and meet people and go to parties on my own and do all this sort of stuff. Like this was all it all sort of started at this, you know, younger age, I think.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
for sure. And from a DJ's perspective, obviously, you know, the original, you know, DJ was someone that played vinyl. You spoke about getting your first controller. When did you start to dive into the world of playing vinyl?
I think I was playing, just with a controller. I was probably till I was maybe 16, and then I think actually, you know, I think I first graduated to CDJs after sort of saving up from gigs when I was probably 18, and I think I started collecting records when I was maybe 15 or 16, but they weren't super dance-centric, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think at the time, there were a few people that were doing some really inspiring things, and that was, I guess, people like, you know, Mure at the time was someone who was incredibly inspiring to me, and I guess what he was doing with Steel City. So my collection was sort of mostly comprised of things like complete label collections of labels that I was at the time really enjoying. So I had all the Steel City releases from like 1 till 15 or something, and all that sort of stuff. And I remember the first day I got a second turntable, I was finally able to actually play the records, and I was just like so afraid to touch them, and I was like not sure what was going on. And that was probably, I think, when I was maybe like 16, 17. So I started with records quite a bit later than I'd started digitally, but I think for me that worked really well. There's always this debate about, you know, like, you know, start playing records because it gives you that feeling and that ability to beat match by ear and do all that. But I think for me, as a very visual person, I think beginning with the digital stuff, and particularly with I was using a software at the time with a controller, like I could see all these waveforms and learn how the music was structured for years before I got into records. So now when I play a record, or even then I played a record, and I could see a version of that waveform in my head as I played it. So it didn't necessarily pose much of a challenge aside from just learning how to, you know, pitch right and keep things running at the same time.
Yeah,
you know? So,
exactly. Because they're you know, that was the thing I learned very quickly when starting out to play wax, was like, actually, you know, it's a thing you've got to really manipulate. And like learning like that touch, and like, you know, some records are really sensitive, and I don't know, you've probably got a term for it, you know, when they're really like slippery on top of the slip mat.
Stuff like that. Well, like they can be a bit warped, and you've got this nightmare on your hands where the center label seems to be the most it seems to have the most contact with the slip mat. So you've just got this kind of like spinning, floating disc.
Yeah,
that's, like, really,
exactly.
yeah,
So little things like that, like you come across these when you're learning, and not to mention things like your equipment. Like I remember when I first started, my needles were really shit. Like
I was the same. Mine were terrible.
Yeah, and I couldn't work it out. I was like, why does it keep going off, like slipping out of the groove and skipping and all this sort of stuff. I was like, is this me? And I was like, got to the point I was like, I'm gonna sell these things. Spoke to a few people, and like that's the best thing that for me was to actually just like speak to people and be like, any tips, like literally that. And one of the first ones was like, make sure you've got good needles, because that makes a huge difference. From your perspective, obviously you've been playing vinyl for a number of years now. For someone learning, do you have any advice for someone like starting out?
Yeah, well, in terms of like just playing records, or
just playing records.
I was gonna say, advice wise, I mean, I've got so much. We could sit here for 2 hours and just talk about things I would say to someone younger than me and everything and all that, because I've been fortunate enough to kind of have a lot of experience, considering my age and everything. But I think in terms of records, I think it comes back to just music in general. I think just have an interest and be passionate. I think being able to go to a record shop and connect with people is something that will never stop exciting me, and it's something that means that when I'm on the other side of the world and I'm on my own, I can just go to a record shop and feel at home immediately. Like there's not really any other let's say art form or discipline or interest or even hobby that allows you to feel like that no matter where you are. So I think just having a real keen interest. I think when you're collecting, like, I used to have people look at me and like, it's pretty funny. I remember taking this quite personally. Someone said to me, I walked out of a record shop and I'd ordered made this big online order. And they're like, this is when I was 18. They're like, you've got too much. You've got too much different music there. Like, you need to focus on the one thing. And I'm like, it was like, I think I had a Rosa Terenzi record and a couple of 80, 93 records and all this sort of stuff. And some like reggae and some disco. And it was a bit like, it was just a mixed bag. But I think, don't let anyone dissuade you from being experimental or just from, having that keen interest in purchasing different kinds of music if you can do it, because I think over the years some of those records have left the collection and some of them have ended up in other people's hands because I have whittled it down a bit and I have decided that probably doesn't make sense with the rest of it. But I think there's a lot to be said for throwing records together and throwing things together that may not necessarily make a whole lot of sense. So I think just have that interest. If you can afford to buy records, which is a hard thing these days because they are very expensive and it is expensive to live. But if you can do it, just do it. Like it's a really wonderful thing being able to play records. And I think now with the time that I've spent with digital DJing and playing records, I almost treat them as, in a way, two different disciplines. I think when it comes to CDJs and all that, you're always mixing in key, or, I like to really be thinking about mixing in key a lot of the time. You can start being creative with things like the, slip reverse and slip mode and even looping if you want to and do all this sort of stuff. I think records for me have always brought me back to this place of simplicity, and it's allowed me to retain my love for music, in particular club music, during times of kind of uncertainty or when I'm feeling a bit jaded by the whole club thing and the whole electronic music thing. Just the whole process and the practice of just throwing records on, particularly with a friend. It just feels like you're sharing music with a friend. But if you're in a club or you're a festival, whatever, it's like it's like you've got the biggest room in the world and you're just at someone's house, you're just sharing music. So I think having that interest is the biggest thing, and I think being interested in it like that will set you up for a life that is sort of enriched by a very sort of pure reminder of how good music can be, and I think it's a really special thing. I think it'll open your world up completely. So I would definitely recommend doing it. And technically, just practice. It's the one thing out of anything else that I've learned. If you practice, you can feel yourself getting better, like physically each day. And if you stop for a while, you feel yourself slipping. It's like nothing else I've ever done before. It is practice. So I would say just get your head down, do it, buy the records, go to the shops, meet the people, have fun with it. Yeah, that's it.
That's perfectly answered. It's so good.
I'm very long-winded, but
no. That's it. But it's a bit. But you're right, though. You know, it's. I think, you know, going back to what you said and kind of remembering and you know, this gets lost, I feel, and you know, I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. Remembering why you're actually doing it.
I'm so
you know, like as we were
incredibly.
talking about before, getting like overly stressed and worked up about, you know, recording a mix or recording a set or what you're going to play that night.
Yeah.
Actually just like going back and looking at the bigger picture for a little bit, like we're lucky enough to be able to play music, whether that's in your lounge room or to a bunch of people. Let's not forget what it's about and actually just like enjoy it for what it is. And I think that's the thing about like collecting records. What I love personally is it's like, and I spoke about Scott spoke at Prize Fight, spoke about this about like, big ups, about, you know, the beauty of actually physically owning that record of that particular label or artist that you really love, and being able to, you know, play that in a format that's not only, you know, you're playing music for people to hear, but from my perspective personally, I love the thrill of, you know, playing vinyl, you know, like, you know, there's obviously an art, and I'm very similar to you. I treat playing on CDJs completely differently to playing on vinyl, and as most people do, but the way I actually DJ is completely different as well.
I'm 100% the same.
Like I'm a lot more patient with my mixing when I mix on vinyl, and like that sort of, you know, I'm very slow to kind of work my way through the set, whereas on CDJs I feel that, and I don't know whether this is a result of the current environment that we're in a lot of the time with, in terms of the music scene and like people wanting things quickly. I mix a lot quicker when I'm on CDJs.
Yeah, I totally
kind
agree.
of because I feel that I have to, and because I'm able to really easily, because you can just chuck on a loop in a spot where it's a little bit more stripped back, and then you're into the next song very easily. Yeah,
it is. It is a funny thing, because I think as much as I'm so grateful for, you know, the advent of this sort of stuff and this technology, it also it sort of does lend itself to this, you know, throw things in quickly, take things out quickly, which I absolutely love, and it's definitely a part of what I do, and it's something, you know, that I've seen in other DJs that I really love and I really look up to in a way, is this ability to kind of like jump in and out of things super quickly and make sense of this sort of mess of audio and really get somewhere in that regard. But I think that's another reason why I really recommend sort of 20, or particularly like a lot of younger people, but anyone in general, like if you have the means, I think being able to go in that direction of buying records and playing records is something that, like, I mean, skill wise, obviously it's brilliant because you're able to really hone what you're doing, and it's, you know, there's, let's say, less training wheels going on or whatever, but it reminds you of what we're doing and why we love doing it, and it strips it back to this simple practice of just like, there's one song playing, when that needle gets the end of that groove, it's going to stop, so we need to play another tune to make sure it keeps going. That's it. And it's like, to me, that is the one thing that has consistently just taken my head out of the pit when things are getting a bit, you know, rough or whatever, and it just reminded me, like, you're just having fun playing music, and you're fortunate enough to be able to play music to people, and it definitely reminds you to slow down, I think, because especially, you know, we're both into multitudes of different music and different genres and styles and everything, and it can be very tempting to be like, okay, this set I'm going to start at 80 BPM, and then I'm going to do some polyrhythmic stuff, and then maybe I'll go all the way up to, you know, work my way up to 140 and play some dubstep and then some half time and go all the way to jungle and back down in like 4 hours. And it's like, it's sick, but sometimes it's like, are we just doing this because we want to be like, oh, we can do this? And then you know, you go and play records. And I mean, I think the most recent set I played, where I was just playing records, I played with my good friend Darcy Mahadi. We played 7-hour set because it was on the daylight savings day, so we got an extra hour. We played for 7 hours, and I think we moved like 4 BPM, and we just played house records, and it was just like, it's like, it just reminds you that there are so many little worlds within this main world that you're sort of inhabiting, and it can really bring you back to the point where you're just like, you know, we're just playing good music, and we've got so much room and so much time to do it. We don't have to be getting anywhere. We don't have to be rushing it. And that, for me, as someone who is very prone to thinking in that manner, it is very reassuring and keeps the fire burning in a way, I think.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. And something that, a place that I really found myself at home was natural selection. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of many people in that sense. It was still is obviously, such an institution, but obviously it had to close the end of last year.
Yeah.
I want to know about your journey there. So how initially did you start working there?
So I was actually, I was working previously at another shop, which was a smaller shop on, it was actually just on High Street. It was called Circuit Tracks, and now they are more of a label and sort of an artist management agency and everything. But at the time, they also had a shop that sort of doubled as an office for them. And Eli was, big ups Eli, he was sort of the one that was heading the shop and basically doing everything up front. And he was someone who, I think right after leaving school, I sort of identified as being someone who was incredibly passionate and who was playing records in a way that I found really interesting. And yeah, sort of to me seemed like he could be in a way sort of a mentor figure, I guess. So I went to that shop, I bought some records, and I just kept going back. And I sort of just kept going back and back and back until I heard him one day just go like, we've got all these records in here. We've got to put them on Discogs. We want to sell them all, but it's going to take so much time. And I just was like, I'll do this for free. I'm just a massive catalog nerd. I just love cataloging stuff. So, and I love being on Discogs. So I was like, I'll do it for free if you just, let me sit here in the shop all day. And then I think I sort of gave him my number, and he just called me back and said, you just want a job? Do you just want to sort of run the store in a way, or sort of, be here on your own and do it? So for I think it was probably about just under a year. It was right before COVID hit. I effectively, in a way ran or partially ran the shop and was there like 5 days a week, I think. I was ordering all the records myself. I was sort of trying to get a bunch of new stuff in there and kind of order some stuff in that was current with a lot of people my age, I guess, at the time, that the Steel City stuff and all that. Because that at that time was what was sort of happening. And yeah, I was there, and then COVID hit, and then they decided that they were going to go in a different direction and focus more on the artist management side and the label side, which they were already doing, but the shop was sort of just like a bonus in a way. And I really owe it all to Eli, because Eli basically called up Charlie, because he was selling the records to Charlie, who obviously Charlie is is Mr. Natural Selection, and he basically said, hey, I've got this guy, he's only been with us for a little bit and we're closing up, do you want to just give him like a trial shift and see what you think? And that was that. And I walked in, I'd already been to Natural Selection quite a few times, and my end goal was to be working at one of those shops up north side, but yeah, it was obviously quite a daunting thing when I just come out of school. And that's sort of how it went. And then I started there, and I started just doing trial stuff, and then slowly it became a thing where, eventually I had my own keys, and I was there between 3 and 5 days a week on my own, and it was just Charlie and I. So we were lucky enough to have people jump in and out, over the sort of few years I was there. But I was sort of the sole main employee next to Charlie for the whole stint, really, till the end, I guess. So yeah, it was something that I guess I always wanted to be doing, but it sort of just happened, and it was, to me, a real testament of, I think if you turn up and you just show that you're interested and you're passionate, it is only going to lead you to a positive place, really. So yeah,
it's as I said, it's such a shame that it did have to close down. From your perspective, and from a DJ's perspective, looking from the outside in, it's always like, it'd be a dream to work in a record store, obviously, from the obvious reasons of having access to so much different music. I kind of want to know, from your perspective, what's managing and owning a record store from Charlie's perspective. It's not an easy job, and particularly with COVID and everything that happened. How do you think the current landscape of the music world.
Yeah.
How do you think that's affected record stores?
It's an interesting question, because I think, I know running a record store has never really been a profitable thing. I guess since the 90s, or even, you know, before the advent of CD, really. You know, you speak to some people, like, I mean, Greg, who runs Hub 301, he used to tell me about how he was running a record store at like 16, I think, or something, and he was already running one. And, you know, he'd say that they'd have lines out the door at people wanting this one tune from this one DJ that had played it, you know, that weekend or whatever. And they'd open up in the morning and there'd already be this huge line. And, you know, for us, you know, you get to the point where you struggle to sell 5 copies of a really hot record in like 3 weeks or something. But I read something once, and it was when I actually first started working at Circa, and it was I think it was a Discogs comment that was buried deep, and it said that someone was speaking about record store owners, and they said, I've never seen a rich record store owner, but I've seen a lot of happy ones. And that was kind of, I think, where it comes from. I think the people that do it because they just want to contribute. I know Charlie was doing it because he just wanted to give back, because, you know, as we say, like, this music thing, it gives us everything, and we owe it everything, but it owes us nothing in a way. So I think his way of giving back for all the years of joy it had given him was to, you know, open that shop. And even though it wasn't going to be a profitable thing and it was a hard thing, it brought him a lot of joy, it brought me a lot of joy, and it brought everyone a lot of joy. I think, well, I hope it did anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
From what I saw, 100%. What Charlie was doing, had a really positive impact on a lot of people. And it, you know, I mean, you're creating this new hub for people to come together and enjoy this shared love. So, that was, I guess, sort of where it came from. And now, obviously, it's that dream of just contributing in some ways becoming a lot more difficult to maintain, because, you know, everything's getting more expensive. We all know it's ridiculous. Records are expensive, but no one wins. Everyone goes, oh, we wish records were cheaper. But pressing a record, like, everyone ends up broke by the end of it, but no one gets any money, but it's still expensive. Like, you know, you pay what, $35 for a 12 these days for like an EP with like 4 tunes on it. And you think, oh, well, that's 4 tunes. If you go on Bandcamp and buy the record or buy the release, maybe it's like $8 or something. And you're like, oh, could it be cheaper? But it's that's how much it is, but no one really wins out of the whole thing, which is just enough to keep going. So I don't know. It's currently, in terms of the present landscape, it's a hard thing to be doing. But I think people that are doing it are doing something that's incredibly important and keeping it alive in a way that right now is very very vital. So I don't know. Like, I think a lot of formats have had their moment and they've come and gone. And I adore a lot of physical formats, but also recognize that they're pretty much obsolete. You know, like tapes, I adore tapes, but they really don't serve much of a purpose aside from being something to enjoy if that's what you're into, which, you know, I am.
Kerry Chandler, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's, you know, with the reel to reel thing. But I think like records, there are so many brilliant pieces of music you can't get anywhere else. They're buried there at the back of that shop, and you've got to be the one to go in and find them.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean,
there's the beauty in it.
It's the ritual, the experience of doing that, and also, you know, if records die out, we lose all that music. So I think there are enough people that care that it basically means that, you know, that brilliant music, and by extension the format, to me, is going to remain alive as long as those people are around, and as long as that love can be transferred to the next generation or whatever. So yeah, I think it's not, maybe it's not in the best spot right now, but it could be worse. And I think if we all play our part, it will remain as an integral part of the whole thing for, you know, indefinitely, I guess. So yeah.
And by play your part, do you mean people going in, supporting record stores and purchasing records, or is there other ways that people can do it? I
think just having an interest is playing a part, because I recognize that it's, as we say, it's an expensive thing. Like, not many people can buy records, and it's also it's impractical. There are a million reasons why you shouldn't be buying records, but there are also a million reasons why you should. And I think doing your part doesn't mean you have to go and buy records, because it's a privilege to be able to do that, and it's also a privilege to be able to assemble a library of music that makes sense. Because it's like, it's one thing to buy a record, but then you got to buy, you know, few hundred records or maybe 100 records, or at least make the ones work you've got. And that's time consuming and expensive. So I think just being interested and like talking about it and, you know, digging on YouTube and being on Discogs and all that, I think all that to me is contributing. And I think just chatting about it and having that interest again is like, I think just passion and interest is always it's gonna win out over everything else. I think so. Yeah,
it's a good motto to have with anything in life. You know, passion and interest. I think that's particularly, you know, should be the forefront of particularly people in the creative industry.
Yeah.
I think that's the driving force. You know, but you look at all the people that are doing it for the right reasons. That's that's the core. From working there, you know, you worked there for a number of years. You may have already touched on it a little bit, but was there anything that, you know, you're working alongside Charlie, you know, such a wealth of knowledge. Was there anything in particular that you felt like a key takeaway from your experience at Natural Selection?
I think from a technical standpoint, just it really enriched my understanding of how to play records, and also it sort of took me away a bit from my proclivities that directed me towards being a bit too pedantic about how I was mixing. And you know, I started learning, particularly like how, you know, when I first used the rotary mixer, I was like, that completely changed the game for me, because I kind of learned and came from this background of this like very mechanical baseline switching technique where I was just like slamming things in and out, and it made sense, but it was quite robotic and quite mechanical, and it kind of introduced me to this. It was an answer to this question I'd had for years of like, how do I like successfully blend music and create these really long blends, but in a way that's not impeding on, you know, a particular bass line or a particular element of a song. And I think that was something that I really learned from there, or from being with Charlie. And I think just I don't want to say like the real soul and the spirit of playing music, because I think that's who you are and that's always there. But I just think, you know, learning how to channel that and harness that, and yeah, I think that to me was something that maybe consciously I wasn't aware of, but I think I became more sure of myself and what I had to offer after seeing him. I mean, he if you haven't, I mean, you've seen him play, he gets out there and he's just immediately like the party starts, you know. And I think seeing that is quite inspiring, because if you're someone who's very heady and very, you know, like in your head about what you're doing and very like overly technical, to just see someone get on there and just like turn on in an instant and just bring the energy up is really quite exciting. And in a way, we're sort of the yin and yang thing of, in me, my style of mixing is very progressive in that I'm always looking to go up somewhere. You know, we talk about people like Ben UFO and Call Super and Object, and these are the sort of people I really look up to, and the manner in which they mix is you know, you're sort of building these platforms and going somewhere, and you're always looking at where you're going. He's very good at just staying on a level for hours and just creating this party and this energy that just never fades. And that was sort of the answer to what I was doing in a way. So I think, yeah, technically speaking, that was sort of what I was really harboring there, or really fostering there. But I mean, yeah, I think it was just also just an attitude towards like life and towards music and everything. Again, as someone who's very just thinks a lot, maybe sometimes too much, you know, I found a lot of comfort in how Charlie had gone about things and how he'd sort of just was able to just live in a way that was so positive and be positive, and he was, you know, he's always the glass half full sort of person, where he's always able to keep giving. I mean, as we say, record store work is, as an owner of a record store, is ridiculous, and it's almost nonsensical to even go into that sort of business. But he could not only do that, but then offer more personally to people just with his energy and his presence. So I just think, just, you know, even outside music as a life thing, I think that's quite exciting to be around, and quite nice, particularly at that age where you're sort of, you know, learning a lot about yourself still. So
Definitely.
yeah,
And, working in a record store, not only are you having to, do all the store stuff, but you're actually having to be, customer facing. And if people want or need, help or some guidance, and, I used to always go in there to Charlie and be like, hey, what sort of bouncy 90 house records do you have? You've got to be on and, willing to donate your energy and time to people regularly and all the time. And for someone to be in a business that is really tough, as you spoke about, it takes a special sort of person to be in that role. And, for those of you who may be listening who have been lucky enough to be around Charlie, and particularly in the record store setting, you'll understand that how, treasured people like that actually are. And Greg's the same, from the Hub 301.
Greg is Greg is an endless source of light, I would say.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. And those sort of people are people that, you get back in your car after spending $300 at the record store and go, that's the best $300 I've ever spent. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Those moments, yeah.
And it's not as if like they're and I've definitely been in record stores where you feel that they're trying to push records in your hands. Like these sort of people aren't like that at all.
No.
They're there for the love and the passion, and they're there to help, guide you and guide your passion. And as a result, there's definitely times I've gone into Natural Selection and walked out with, not even a record, pretty rarely, but let's be honest. But you know what I mean? It's not like, 100%. You're only walking out with one record, like what's going on? I've been in record stores where that's been, they've been like, oh, what, you're only like buying this? I've, recommended all these are really good records, like you might be reading between the lines of who I might be speaking about, but
no, I certainly I know, I got that immediately, but I mean, well, that's the thing. It's like it's about just like facilitating that, or like it's enabling your love for music and for being around music to have a home in a way. That's what these people are doing. Is they're creating a space where you can walk in and you can allow that energy and that love you've got for this thing to just sort of have a physical space, and you can let that out and you can enjoy that. And like they're mostly just wanting you to hear some good music and to feel like you've walked out of there inspired and maybe a little bit wiser on the music front. So
something I want to talk to you about, and we were touching on it earlier, was around sleeper tape.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a really cool concept. And for those of you that don't really, they may have not heard it or are new to it, do you want to give the listeners a little bit of an understanding on what it is as a project? Yeah,
so I mean, for so long I've wanted to establish some sort of label that's allowed me to not only push a side of music that I think is underrepresented, but also push music from friends and new friends and all these brilliant producers and everything that don't really have a home for their sort of style of music yet. And more specifically, I guess it's been inspired by the school of thought that you could maybe apply to things like punk music and like noise music and experimental music. And I guess it's sort of covering mainly, I say non-dance music, but it's mostly music that with a sort of DIY flavor to it, but mostly focusing on experimental music, I guess. So I think I always wanted some sort of side project to be able to direct all of my non-club exploits towards, because musically I adore everything, but I also recognize that it's very hard for people to make sense of what you're doing when you just you'd be like, okay, here's a mix I did of just like Hungarian folk music, and now here's jungle, and here's a dubstep mix, and here's one where everything happens, and it's like, and here's a disco mix, and it's like, okay, this is cool, but like what are we going to get when we go and see you play? So I think as much as I love people having that open mind and trusting me in that way, that's really what I really want. I also, recognize that there needs to be a separate space for some of these things. So, I started this little label, which I don't necessarily know if it's going to be the one that will be my magnum opus, let's say. Like I think I've always wanted to, as most people do, run and establish a label that really has made a massive impact on the direction of the whole thing, I guess. But for now, this is I guess my answer to the whole thing. It's tape based, so just cassette tapes, limited run. The design is mostly done by myself, sometimes in collaboration with a good friend of mine, Damo, and it's. I mean, the first release was a mixtape that I did myself, and the second release was from a mysterious local duo. One of them's a very, very, very talented sax player, or multi-instrument. They're both multi-instrumentalists. One of them's really focusing on keys. One's a real sax head. And then I did another one that was like the concept tape, which we were talking about a bit before. And that was under another alias, and it was a mixtape as well. And one side of that was sort of dark ambient, and the other side was sort of machine, like really slammed machine music with some like sort of early 80s house tools thrown in, that sort of really jacking stuff. And there's a few bits and pieces coming down the line. There's one on the way from a very, very talented local producer as well, which is like a big project that's sort of a number of songs has been made within the one project file. Cool. And doing some radio stuff as well. The radio is obviously something that's really important to me. I think I've been endlessly inspired by so many labels having these long radio stints where they're just getting really deep and a bit weird and everything. So I think it's an answer to that, to the side of me that isn't so, let's say, palatable. or palatable in a club setting.
In a club setting, yeah, for sure. And I think going back to what you said there about radio, I think there's a beauty in radio for that. You know, like it allows people, to get different artists on and connect in that way, but also for themselves, play stuff that they're not gonna play in a club, play stuff that you play in your lounge room that you still want people to hear, but like you can't, it's, as you said, probably not going to be as palatable. And if you are able to play it and people like it in a club, that's then brilliant. Hats off to you.
That is that is the ultimate pleasure, is being able to get these weird bits of music that you don't think make any sense, and then you play them and people love them. That's
exactly. And I guess this segues beautifully into what I want to ask you about around dipping into different genres, particularly over the long course of a night. How was your all night long at Angel Bar?
So that was.
I'm really sorry I couldn't get there.
No, that is all good. You're a very busy man. But it was very good fun. It was obviously a very intimate space, so it sort of allowed for like a nice connection with the people that were there and everything. It was really cool. I think so. It ended up being about 6.5 hours. And I think you get sort of that length of a set. I think anything over about 5 hours, and it starts to feel like you sort of just slip into it. And I think you get to the end of it, and you go like, I wish I had another 4 hours or something, which sounds really weird because a lot of people look at that and go, well, that's almost like a full work day. Like I can't imagine standing there in one spot and playing tunes for as long as I'd go to work or whatever. But you just get into this rhythm of moving up and down and everywhere, and you get a bit delirious at points, and you sort of come out of it the other end just battered, but feeling brilliant about the whole thing. And I think that night was interesting because you spend years listening to all night long sets and being present at them and being blown away by them, and they've always been the ones that have meant the most to me. I think every set I've ever seen that has made a really lasting impact has been an all night long performance. So you have this idea of how it's going to go, and you get there, and I have these ridiculous playlists. I mean, I should have shown you before actually, because I've redone my whole library and it's just ridiculous. And you get there, and then you start to play, and you're just like, you start feeling the room, and you go, okay, hang on, this is a bit different to what I was expecting. Because I mean, I've done so many all night longs before. I've played records for 6-7 hours in smaller venues. I've done parties for other people where I played all night long. But this was the first night where I did one that was just like, my name, my event. I'm just playing all night, and it's totally controlled by me. So it's just like wherever we go is all on me. And yeah, I think it definitely it played out in a way that I was really happy with. But also looking back, I probably would have, maybe been more patient at times. At other times, I would have maybe taken more of a risk. I think next time I play a set of that length, I do want to get to a point where I'm maybe freaking people out a bit more than I was. I think it was quite, for the most part, reasonably safe. Like I started at 80 BPM, moved upwards pretty steadily to about 140, and then kind of went into a weird little ambient section, went up to about 170 and hit some jungle and some drum and bass, and then went back down to 80 and then worked back up to about 125 and finished there.
Sick.
With some good sort of 45 minutes of just soaring deep 90s house cuts. And yeah, I was really stoked with it. But yeah, I think in the future, my goal is to probably give myself space and time to hit these weird little pockets. Because I think when you're thinking about a set like that, and when you're preparing for it, you're so focused on yourself and what you want that when you get there, you start to notice that, hang on, this is such a long evening that a lot of people are going to be moving in and out, and particularly with an intimate venue like that, and it's like small capacity, people are going to come out, they're going to come in and out, they're going to leave, they're going to come back. It's like you're not dealing with this one audience that are just paying attention for 7 hours. So you sort of you can take the pressure off a bit, and you can give yourself time to do different things. And I think I was maybe a little bit too focused on just being really getting places. I had some moments where I'm like, yeah, I've got here, I'm playing jungle now, but like I probably could have just like hovered over back there a little bit and seen where that tangent went. I probably didn't have to segue like this, but it's all very nitpicky stuff that contributes to the development of what I'm doing. But I think as an evening and everything, it went really well. So
that's great. I'm glad to hear. From all reports, it went well. I actually had someone write into the listener questions talking about you all night long.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's super nice to hear. I'm glad it resonated with people.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get to those in a second. Couple of things I want to talk to you about before we do move down that path. There's so much talk around the whole, TikTok techno and how social media has changed the scene for better or for worse. Where do you see the future of electronic music heading?
I think it's interesting because like I definitely used to look at it through more of a negative lens, I think all of us do, as people who maybe like to think they champion, taking your time and being interested over long periods and building this passion over time. I think when you start to see these things getting all this traction that you don't necessarily connect with or you don't think represent the roots of where they've come from, you start to think, like it's like what are people a bit like what's going on? It's like it doesn't really compute, I think. But I look at it now and I think, well, I was really lucky to get into music when I got into it, particularly electronic music, and even the music I got into was not the real, it wasn't the real peak of what I'm doing now, or it wasn't what I'm looking at now as being the most, let's say, interesting music. And I was lucky to even find that. It was really a chance thing, But now, a 10-year-old can see on TikTok that such and such is playing or making this techno music, and it's like, it might not be the most brilliantly intricate music you've ever heard. It doesn't ever have to be, but it might not be, what we would look at as being like, let's call serious club music. I hate to say serious, but that could then inspire that person to get into music at a really young age, and to get into this music at a really young age. And we all start somewhere, and I think with how accessible this sort of brand of techno has become, it's only going to result in more people being interested in it. And, in a few years' time, they're going to leave behind what they'd initially been exposed to, and they're going to go forward in favor of this, maybe deeper music that has a bit more history behind it, music that's been crafted with maybe a little bit more thought as to how it affects people on the dance floor. Like any of this sort of stuff, I think as much as it is easy to look at these things negatively because they are disrupting what we've always seen as being the prestigious sort of world of deep diving DJs and music. It's I think it can be a positive thing because it's we've got more people interested in this than we probably have for quite some time, and probably maybe even have forever. So
yeah.
But I mean, the whole social media thing, we could sit here and talk about that all day in terms of what it means for an artist and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting to speak to a number of different people around it, and everyone's got varying opinions on it, and I think I'm very same boat as you. Someone who had a really interesting and such a beautiful take on it was Jeanette, and talking about how a lot of the time with like the older heads, it's like fuck this, fuck social media, like Jeanette was completely of the opposite and said that similar sort of thing. It's exposing more people to be able to see what other people are up to, and she feels that she wouldn't be still DJing today if it wasn't for kind of going with the what's happening and rolling with it,
100%.
and she's kind of embraced it in that way, where she's come from quite a traditional DJ background, vinyl only sort of DJ, and even CDJs speaking to her about them, just kind of adapting and rolling with it and kind of embracing it all, is kind of the way to go about it. I think the thing that for me, the pain points around it is playing in certain clubs from time to time, more often than not, actually. And I think there's just, for me, and you might resonate with this, is just a lack of patience with
100%.
with sets.
100%.
And, losing people, very quickly and very easily, when it's not necessarily what they've signed up for, and it's not necessarily what they've seen on social media. They're chasing certain music, they're chasing certain edits, and that's a sort of side of it all that really frustrates me as well as a number of other people.
100% agree. I mean, they're chasing those moments. Someone's just not even like, they don't even want the tune, they just want that 10 second clip of the shaky camera behind the DJ playing the bootleggy thing. And that's kind of it. And even, you can go to a club now and see that sort of thing happening. And as soon as like a breakdown happens, like people are just confused again. It's like, it's like they have, it's like 10, 20, 30 seconds of like, this is amazing, and then nothing. I think for me, for what I love doing and for the music I play, it is a really like quite a dangerous thing, because I really feel the pressure to not sort of hover around any sort of challenging realms too much or for too long. And I think sometimes it has made me, when I'm looking at the two tunes, I've chosen the safer one, because I go, maybe these people here are not going to be so receptive to this. And maybe people there to see me, but you also identify that sometimes people are there for the party, and it's your job to keep that party going.
Exactly.
And I think it has been a really positive thing. I mean, we've seen all these DJs get this big second wind, and these big artists all of a sudden blow up again, which is really fantastic. Particularly like a lot of older DJs who are already brilliant. I mean, someone like Fortet was already at the peak of his career, really, and was already an incredibly accomplished musician, and then all of a sudden had like a resurgence in a way, and had this second wind, and it was even bigger than what had happened previously. And that sort of thing happening is brilliant, because someone like that really deserves, to have their record in everyone's home. Every single person should have a Fortet record. And there's so much positive, in this exposure thing. But this whole attention span problem is becoming incredibly damaging. Particularly like for younger DJs. I mean, for people who, it's a problem for everyone, but for people who maybe are feeling that pressure or don't have that confidence yet to take those risks, it's not allowing people to experiment and to be creative in these more interesting realms, I think. And for people who maybe are a little bit more developed, it's just really frustrating, and it means we can't do what we want to do or say what we want to say, I think. So, I definitely 110% agree with you on the on the unfortunate negatives
Mm.
associated with the whole thing. Yeah.
So before we get on to our last little segment, I want to ask you a few random questions.
Yeah.
So first one is it true that you're notoriously late to things because you're digging? Busy digging?
That I've never been late to a gig.
No, I'm not necessarily
Like,
referring to gigs.
Late
maybe.
to like I've only ever been early to gigs, but in terms of other things, that is probably a valid thing to say. Or sometimes I'll disappear, particularly if I'm at like a doof or something and I'm playing at a doof, I'll just disappear for a few hours because I've brought my laptop with me. I'm just in my car like digging during the day, or like even at night when everyone's like partying or whatever, I just disappear. I don't know, like notoriously late. If so, it somehow has escaped my ears, but that may be a true sentiment. I mean, I would say in terms of just general things, like maybe like just social things, I would say there is definitely a pretty high chance that is what happens a lot of the time. So yeah. I can't disagree with that. No, yeah.
Is it true that Liam Neeson has a sleeper tape?
He does,
shirt?
yes. Very obscure origin story, that one. But one of my very dear friends, Tommy, was basically he's like a sound guy, works on like films and stuff, and he worked on a Liam Neeson film, and Liam Neeson was quite keen on securing some local merch. So there is now a sleeper tape, and I imagine on his private jet still. Maybe he's wearing it right now. Who knows? But yeah, there is a photo somewhere of him wearing one, and it's not photoshopped. Everyone sent it to me because I shared it, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is photoshopped. It's pretty good Photoshop." I'm like, if I was just good at photoshopping, I wouldn't. There would be no marketing. Like, I mean, I don't have any marketing campaigns. It's niche experimental music. Like, it just loses money. But but if I did have a marketing campaign or I had marketing going on, like, I would just stop doing it. I'd just start photoshopping stuff like that because it looks, convincing enough. But yeah, it is out there and it has happened.
Nice.
So, yeah, we need to try and get that shirt maybe, or a piece maybe into the Grammys or something next time. I think we need to move upwards with that. But yeah.
And obviously, you rock a pretty cool, fit from.
Oh, thank
for
you.
For the most.
Thank you.
Most.
That's incredible.
I reckon every time I see you, I'm always like, damn, that guy's got game. Often in all black. I want to know, are we going to see a resurgence of the yellow/orange Deadmau5 headphones?
Oh yeah. I wish. I mean, the driver blew up in those. They were my first pair of headphones, and the only reason why I stopped using them was because, one of the drivers blew up, and it was just kind of like, I don't know. I thought it was time to retire them. I mean, I don't know. Like, Deadmau5 is someone who means so much to a lot of people and meant a lot to me, and I definitely did not put them away because I thought he was uncool because he's still a G. But But yeah, I mean, you know what? They still exist. They're still in a drawer somewhere at home. I think. I mean, for a while I've been thinking, I should have some party where I just like get everyone together and, everyone I grew up with and just play all the tunes we were playing when we were like between 14 and 16.
No, that would be epic.
I might have to rebuild them for that.
That would be sick.
And
please do.
Yeah, I think I may have to organise that because that'd be good fun. But yeah.
So you're not only a talented DJ, but I also hear that you are or were a exceptional shipping captain up in Hamilton Island.
Yeah,
steering a boat.
You're like the Nardwar of Naarm DJs. Yeah, well, like I went on a trip when I was this was probably pre-COVID, I think. And because my dad's a really big, just like ocean guy, like he just loves everything about the ocean, and that was passed on to me. In fact, when I was younger, I'd always say to people, I'm going to be a DJ, and they're like, oh, but what if you had to have a normal job? I'm like, well, if I had to, I'd be a marine biologist, which I feel like is quite a common answer amongst like kids because they just think marine biology means being around the ocean and kids love the ocean. But I always said that was what I was going to do if the music thing wasn't a thing. So I've always been really interested in the ocean and everything. So we, me and a few friends, we hired this big catamaran and basically sailed around the Whitsundays a few years ago. And I for the most part, piloted it just solo because they just give you the boat and they just go for it. Like if you crash it, you'll pay for it. We got insurance, but so I think it was like 8 of us maybe. A bunch of people I'd never met before, a few really good friends, and yeah, just like island hopping, just
Sick.
on this big boat, and yeah, it's if that's something you can ever do, it is one of the best experiences.
Yeah, I did it when I was 7. I wasn't in charge. But
Really?
Yeah.
Surprised.
Yeah. No.
It's a brilliant trip though. It's really, really. Yeah.
There you go. What else have I got for you? I will go on to the listener questions because there's some good ones in here and we've got a few to get through. So first one is from Lum's World and is hair care routine, please.
Oh, that's incredibly kind. Well, I mean, I've recently changed the cut, as you can see.
Yeah,
so I don't know if that
good.
still applies because I will say the promo photo we used for this was, I did get a few messages regarding the hair, and I think the hair was sitting in quite a nice manner at the time because it was sort of when it was off my face, it was very long and it was sort of wavy, and that photo caught some lighting on my hair, and it probably looked a bit more luscious than it is. What do I do? Oh yeah, really overkill, but I was using Olaplex for a bit, and that just like I feel like that did not do wonders for my hair. So
what's Olaplex?
It's like a I mean any person who's had their hair bleached is gonna like scoff at me butchering the explanation of this, but it's just like the recommended like premium like shampoo and conditioner treatment for particularly bleached or damaged hair, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Complete overkill because I'm sort of person, once I get into like a routine or like some sort of routine of like personal care or whatever, I just go overboard with it.
Yeah.
But it's like everything. I'm either all or nothing. Like either I've got either the studio's messy or it's like the records are organized by like country and genre and like subgenre and the alphabetical order and all this sort of stuff. So there is not really much of a hair care routine going on other than don't towel dry because you will end up with split ends and you will damage the hair.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's about it, to be honest, right now. Yeah. And just like, shampoo, conditioner, don't overdo it, don't underdo it. Yeah. Cool. But I hope my hair now is looking as photogenic as it was.
It is. It's giving object.
Thank you. I've had that a few times. When I first got it done, actually, it was on a Saturday. It was when I was playing at a gig a couple weeks ago. And someone took a video and it was like, because it had just been done, it was just like square. So you could just see this like square like hairline going on from like all the way at the back. And I was like, hopefully it's not too blocky, but that is the utmost compliment because that is he's someone I look up to a lot. So that's would rather look like him than not. So
Ned Bennett says, "What is your track digging process? One of the most eclectic selectors I've ever heard."
Shouts to Ned. Thank you, Ned. Ned is an endless inspiration to us all in terms of his work ethic and just how lovely he is as a person.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the mindset that comes with loving every sort of music just leads you naturally to a spot where you are just open to things, and things sort of come to you. I mean, my brain never switches off. It's not like I don't know. Say your hobby's drawing or something. I'm not like, I'm gonna go draw and illustrate for a bit, and then I'm gonna go do something else. I'm gonna do some work. I'm like always like, there's not one moment in my life when my ears are not open and I'm not thinking about this whole thing. So I think being open to things is obviously the biggest thing. But on more of let's say a level that is able to be replicated. I mean, record stores are massive. I think the easiest way to just completely just send a hammer right through your entire web of knowledge and what you think you know is to just walk into a record store. Like, go to AliTunes, like always crazy collection, always refilling the bins, like stuff coming from overseas that you're not getting anywhere else. Go to Skydiver, go talk to Mike, who's like a phenomenal DJ, but also just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all types of music, particularly music that that has influenced what I was doing with the tape label and everything with Sleeper Tape. He was really influential and put me onto a lot of stuff. But I think, being in a record store, just having a really good understanding of what you know so that you can then find what you don't know. I think for me, I've just got this web of knowledge when it comes to certain labels. I go like, you know, you think about Hessel Audio, you think about Trilogy Tapes or Lies or something. You start to then really get to know these catalogs, and then you know where they extend to. You know who these people collaborate with, and then, you know, it becomes this sort of never-ending snowball of things, and you can find these scenes, and you can get into them. Discogs is a massive one. I mean, CCL actually recently did a video with RA, which was really illuminating, and I think probably captures this in a manner that is succinct but also visually really detailed. Just going on Discogs and, you know, going like house from 1980s and then pairing house with like a term like abstract, or pairing it with something like disco or something. So you're getting these weird genre combinations. That was a video that, I mean, that was sort of already in a way how I was digging, maybe without knowing it sometimes. But that really, to me, it outlined a process that I think is easy to replicate, but also is just going to immediately throw you straight into a realm of crazy new music.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously Bandcamp's great. Bandcamp I adore because you can just find anything. I think using the search function, that surprised me search function. Have you used that before? It's
no, actually,
so if you go into Bandcamp, you can click like electronic, whatever, like rock, all this sort of stuff. You go into electronic music, or you search up house or whatever you search up, and it sorts by best selling automatically. But up the top, you can click where it says best selling, and you can go date added. So you can sort it by everything that's just been added. So everything that's just appeared on Bandcamp is going to pop up first. Or you just go surprise me, and it just sends you a random list of music tagged with house that's ever, like all the stuff that's ever been released on Bandcamp just gets thrown at you in a random order. So that's a really good way to just like, instead of going, oh, best selling techno, here's, you know, all the stuff everyone's playing, you just immediately shake it up and end up with this really cool stuff. That is honestly probably the quickest way to end up with really cool new music, is just do that. Because within like one click, you've got, or 2 clicks, you've got this whole list, this whole page of music that you've never seen before that spans generations, really, because people are re-releasing on Bandcamp and reissuing and all this. So that is the quickest way to do it. Another way that is frowned upon, that I feel like will not win me any favors, because no one really likes Spotify and no one really loves streaming services, because they do us artists very dirty, and they don't pay us well, and they also, you know, fund a lot of terrible things. I do find a lot of streaming services, if you build a playlist of songs you really like, the whole AI thing, it's all becoming so good,
crazy, isn't
that
it?
you just start you add a few songs you like, and it just can start throwing more tunes at you.
Yeah.
And like, really good for really hyper specific stuff that you don't know where to look for to build that, you know.
Definitely. It's got that function these days where you can have the playlist playing, and then it has recommended tracks that automatically just play as a shuffle.
Yeah, that's
smart
amazing.
shuffle. I think
that's
called.
it. Yeah. So I think as much as these sort of technologies take away from us, they also platform us, and they also give us a way to kind of break the system and use it for our own good in a way. We can do these sort of things and have these AI assisted playlist creating mechanisms and all this sort of stuff, and just, even to make the playlist, just click add at the bottom and just add all these random tunes. I find that to be like, if I'm not in the mood to just go crazy techie mode and start going Discogs lists and all this sort of stuff, I just do that, because it probably is one of the quickest ways to just be immediately thrown a bunch of new music. I'd say like that's probably those are my main avenues. I think the record sort of thing is the most important to me, because it just throws you right in front of a bunch of different music, and it makes it tactile and it makes it memorable. I think if you want to remember your music, the best way to do it is to be around the record. Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, I think that Bandcamp tip is a really
that's a good one. I've noted that.
I think that is really good, and also I think I love Bandcamp and I love everything that's come from it, but I think there has been this like, it's like a commercial underground level that's been created now, where I think it's brilliant, because everyone's buying the same stuff and everyone's loving the same stuff, and all these artists are getting paid, and people are buying the music, and it's brilliant. But, now there's a lot of records that everyone's buying and everyone's playing. Like, there's a few labels that we look at that are continuously being purchased by everyone, and then the next weekend, oh, here's all these people playing, and there's that same tune's being played by everyone, and like, I don't want to be someone who's like, oh, I've just got to play stuff that no one knows, but I also
oh no, that is so annoying. Sorry.
Nah, chill.
It's literally an alarm to remind me to do something.
Oh, no worries. Well, I don't want to keep you here if we go.
No. It was actually meant to be for tomorrow morning.
Oh, right. There you go. Well, hopefully it isn't tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I know. So stupid.
But, yeah, so there's like this whole, I guess what you could call like a commercial underground thing basically means that now people are all buying similar stuff and playing similar stuff, which is brilliant for artists and is brilliant for these people and it's brilliant for the music, but it also means that I think if you want to stand out and you want to play music that is like different, I think it's wise to look a bit deeper than just the best selling, new techno record or the record that everyone's playing, because it's, and I think in the mix that I've done today, there's definitely a few of those in there that are like, to me, sit in that category of being the big tune that people were, that everyone sort of bought it at a certain time. But I think it's all part of it. I think, though, I think as much as maybe you might sound a little less unique playing some of these tunes, those tunes also become, the anthem of the summer, or they become that tune where it's like, it's still an underground tune and you bring it back here and maybe no one's heard it, but it can mean that these tunes that normally don't have much of a life or aren't sort of attention grabbing become very anthemic. When you look at like Pangea's like Installation
is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm immediately like, everyone's playing it, everyone's buying it, but it's brilliant, and it means you can play that and you can place that in amongst a bunch of other stuff that's really interesting, and it's like anthemic, and it gets people up and going, and it's like it's almost like a this brilliant draw card. Be like, finally, here's a tune that is, or that kind of fulfills that role of being that almost like edit-esque tune, or that vocal-esque tune, or that tune that activates that part of people's brains, but it's actually a really good tune.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a brilliant piece of music. So
yeah, big ups Pangea.
Yeah, big ups for that record.
I know Pangea loves listening to this show.
Yes,
so.
Big ups Pangea. I know you've heard every episode, so I hope you've heard this one as well. And, big shouts.
We've got 3 more listener questions, and then we're on to Ricky's quickies. So, this one's from Sneaky Turk. Why are you the nicest person in the world?
Oh, that's incredibly kind. That is so lovely. I don't know what to say about that. It's made me blush.
It's a hard one to answer, really.
I'll just say there's the world. There's a lot of good things happening in the world. There's a lot of bad things as well. So I think if you can be on the side of the good things and make people happy and do your thing, it's very, very lovely. And I think I've been lucky enough to find something that I really love and that has brought me so much joy. So I think the least I can do is try and give that back in some way, which I hope is felt. I mean, it's hard to keep up with things in terms of it's hard to feel like you're giving everyone the time of day sometimes when we talk about social media, and sometimes you feel like you want to be giving everyone your time, but it's really hard. But I think if you can make people feel valued, then this whole thing is going to be a nicer space to operate in and a nicer world to live in. So
definitely.
Hopefully that answers the question.
No, it's perfectly answered. It's a hard one to answer, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That is an incredibly kind thing to say. So.
This one's from Shah Rooney. How do you keep your library organised with such a wide variety of music?
Well, at one point it wasn't organised, and it was. So we'll go through the record box thing quickly, I guess, because that I think is what I've always looked for in DJs I look up to is, or that I am interested in, is I want to know how their record box is sorted. We've already talked about the records. Like at home, I've got all these IKEA shelves, as everyone does, with dividers in them by, like label with little logos on them, or by genre or location or whatever. I'm blessed in that my brain seems to want to retain musical information more than it wants to retain anything else. So, I mean, I can't remember what I've eaten today, but I can tell you, I could probably write you a list of all my records at home, and I'd probably get 80% of the way there at least. I think I've got about 1,000 records. So, wow. I think it helps having a good memory. But there are a lot of DJs who have said that they've got terrible memories who are the best DJs you've ever heard. So, I think when it comes to record box, I think something that's really useful is every time you play a gig, I've done this forever and I will always do it. I just get home, grab the history, put the USB in the computer, grab the history from the gig. Because, if you go to the bottom, go histories, you can see everything you played that night.
Mm-hmm.
Put that into a new playlist and title it like, I don't know, like Angel Music Bar, Telemusic, 10th of May or whatever. And I put that into a venues folder. And I have all these folders, particularly for like, for Melbourne or whatever. I have this folder of venues where I have all these venues and then all the gigs I've played and the dates and what the gig was and everything. And I just sort of remember what happened at all the gigs.
Wow.
So as a result, I can go, I remember I was playing with, I played this set with like Genki Tanaka, who shouts to Genki. He's the most beautiful soul ever and a brilliant DJ. I played a gig with him a few years ago. I think it was just at Stingrays, and we just sat at around like 115 to 120 BPM for like 5 hours. And I still go back to that playlist now, and I just go like, oh yeah, Genki and I played a few years ago, and it was like fantastic. So if I need that sort of music, I'll just go back to that. So I do a lot of that. That's sort of the last step, I would say, in terms of that's the thing I maybe look to least, but it's really important to me still to have that. I've recently redone my library, which was actually, I sort of did that, and it was prompted by the All Night Long thing.
Mm.
So now I've looked to break up music by the feeling that I think it sort of provokes, or the space it occupies in a set. Because I think one of the most dangerous things you can do as a multi-genre DJ, let's say, is to, and this is just for me anyway, is to make, a house playlist and call it like Chicago House and put your Chicago House records in there. Because all it's going to do is you're going to get to start, maybe you're playing like 125, 128 BPM, and you're just going to go, I'll play some Chicago House, and you're just going to naturally feel safe in that realm, and you're going to just play that whole playlist, or maybe you're going to really dip into that. If you really want to be that sort of multi-genre DJ who hops around and does, what these people like Ben UFO do. I actually learnt this from him, I guess, or he articulated this in a way that really made sense to me, was instead of playlisting all this music as like, here's my dubstep, here's my UKG, playlist it by feeling, playlist it by the time in the night that makes sense. So mine are basically done based on how my ideal set goes, and they've got all these really stupid names, like that really only mean something to me, but they articulate a certain time in the night or a certain feeling that I want to emulate. So I've got one called like Roll Eternal, that's just like rollers that to me you could just play forever and they would just roll on. I've got one called like, I can't remember. I've got a bunch of like tension tools. I've got one called Tension Tunnel, which is just like crazy, like wind up whirring tunes that are just, I could just stack and just basically go upwards. And these are tunes that's like techno, there's house, there's breaks, there's dubstep, it's everything. There's like quam, but it all sits in the same space. So it keeps me away from thinking about genre too much, which I think if you want to operate like this is like in this manner and how I like to do it, it's sort of what you need to be doing, or at least it's helpful to me. But I think it's also helpful to still have these dubstep playlists, these UKG playlists, because sometimes I want to emulate, or I want to really get that feeling or that message across. And sometimes I just want to play a dubstep tune, so I will. But I really stay away from doing it too much, or I craft it so that's the last place I'd go. So yeah, I think, sorry, that's a very long-winded answer, but I think figuring out how you like to progress through a set is the first thing, and then designing your library to accommodate for that is the next thing you would do. And then you would look at that, road test it, and see how it works and how it doesn't, because you can make it look all pretty and you're going to get to the gig and go, I'm not into this doesn't work for my brain.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it took me knowing how I play and really, and this is only after 10, 11 years going, okay, now I know I can reverse engineer what I do to be built in a way where I can just add tunes to these playlists and it's just going to work forever, So I think knowing how you play is the big one.
Yeah. I like that. And the final one, it's not a question, but comes in from Ash Lackey. It's not a question, but one of the best selectors in Melb, a true crate digger and a legend.
Oh, thank you, Ash. Ash, right back at you, Ash. Ash is an eternal G. and he's someone I only met maybe like a year or so ago, I think. I mean, I struggle to tell the time honestly, but wonderful soul. So
big shouts.
Big shouts. Look forward to many more adventures with Ash.
All right, it's on to the final segment.
Yes,
Ricky's Quickies.
Terrible news. I was enjoying this so much.
I know.
I don't understand.
I know. It's and that's the thing. There was so much that we didn't really cover, so might have to get you on for round 2.
Yes. Well, sorry. I do give quite long-winded answers, I feel, but
That's
I hope
right.
it's been somewhat
so insightful. That's the thing. I don't want it to end either.
Oh,
so,
thank you. That's incredibly kind.
Favorite club to play at locally?
It'd have to be Sub Club, I would say. I think there's, Miscellany is a fantastic club, and they're really pushing it as far as building a community and everything. But I think just Sub Clubs, the sound system. I mean, I adore the space. I think the space is so conducive to the sorts of performances I really love to hear, and I think that space brings the best out of people more than any other space. I think the best sets I've seen in Melbourne have all been at Sub Club, in terms of the best club sets. So yeah, I'd say Sub Club.
Nice. First festival you went to?
This is like sort of, no, I don't want to say embarrassing, but it was when I was like 15. I think I went to 14 or 15. I went to Good Life.
Yeah, same here. That's mine.
Yeah. So like it's not some, like, I've got a few friends who are like, yeah, my first festival experience was when I was like super young, and I went to IV, and I had this crazy time on the dance floor, and I'm like, no, I went to Good Life and saw Will Sparks. So
yeah, nice. Will Sparks was the G.
Yeah.
What's the best needle in the market?
Charlie is going to light me on fire for divulging this information, but the Nagaoka DJ03 HD is, in my eyes, the best. And keep in mind, I am not Mr. Sit there for 8 hours with 6 turntables watching every cartridge and seeing what happens guy. But I believe Charlie was recommended them because he actually got them for me as a birthday present. And he was recommended them by an ex-Paradise Garage DJ.
Oh.
So like someone who was, at the very beginning. And he had basically tested them by just having a bunch of turntables running and like testing resistance and like having, Q burn and having all of these, frequency response charts up and all that sort of stuff. And basically, decided that this was the best cartridge. And I would agree, because it just has such ridiculous low mid presence. It just, you play with an Autophon cartridge and then you put this thing on and it just has this like punch that just blows everything out of the water. Yeah, they are discontinued, but you can get them still online. I found them on some Japanese website pretty cheap, being like the replacement needles cheapish, but the actual cartridge I think they're like $250 each. So they're not that cheap.
Pretty steep.
Yeah, they're brilliant, but they're discontinued. So I don't know if you want to be messing with that sort of stuff, because then you got to buy new ones, but they're brilliant. So
where's your dream event or place to play in the world?
I mean, it's a funny one, because like, I mean, when I was like 17, 18, I was always saying to people like, I want to play that Deck Mantle closing set, that's the one. And obviously that's always going to be the dream. That's a dream that many people share. I think in the short term, or in terms of in the near future, there's a few I really look to. I mean, it's hard sometimes to comment when you haven't been to some of these festivals yet. I think a massive one, which I don't imagine anyone's mentioned on this podcast, would be Free Rotation, because that is nice. I mentioned actually Objects Free Rotation recordings were like, I can't even articulate how important they were in my original learnings, and sort of they were sort of the sort of turning point for me from playing that main stagey, I'm just playing EDM stuff, to like, okay, this is what serious music is. This is what I actually really love, and that was what really energized me. So I think being able to play there would be such a full circle moment for me. I don't think many Aussies have done it, but I know Kia is doing it this year, so shouts to Kia, because that is an amazing achievement, because I don't think you hear of many Aussies being involved with it at all.
Speaking of eclectic taste,
Kia's brilliant.
Kia's the one.
The hero. I wouldn't want to say national hero at this point. But yeah, I'd say free rotation. Horst is a huge one.
Yeah.
Horst is like getting a lot of. I mean, last few years have been really big for Horst, but that's definitely a big one. Waking Life is again somewhere I'm yet to go, but a place I've dreamed of playing at for quite a few years now. And yeah, of course, Deck Mantle. That's hugely influential. And I think. Oh, actually, I've forgotten the to me the mecca, which is of the music that I love. It's Houghton.
Yeah,
Houghton
nice.
is the one.
Yeah,
Houghton is.
sick.
If I could only play at one festival, it'd probably be Houghton. I would say.
Nice. What would your last meal on earth be?
My last meal on earth. That's a really interesting one. I'm a real food guy. I enjoy. I mean, I think to me, food kind of activates a similar part of the brain as music does. So I do enjoy my food. Probably like a beef tartare, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what actually it's Charlie and I's favorite food.
There
So
you go.
both of us, it's like obviously quite popular with French cuisine. So
Yeah.
when we go out together, we just both get a plate of that. And go.
Nice.
So that would probably be it, I reckon. Yeah.
Dream back to back.
Probably Call Super.
Nice.
I would say. John Kay is another one. John is someone who's been hugely influential to me. A name that should be beyond a household name. He's been doing it forever and is just ridiculous at the front of like top of his game at the moment. I mean, always has been or probably always will be. Like he is phenomenal. I'd say John. I'd say Call Super. I mean, yeah, we keep talking about Object, but I'm gonna say Object.
Twins.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that would probably be it. I mean, yeah, Ben obviously is a massive one as well, but I feel like I think Scott said Ben, so I'm gonna not say Ben
Scott
because it's been
Ben.
said. So
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, we as much as it'd be cool for this to be Ben fan club, we need to expose people to some new things. So
That's it.
Yeah.
If you could be any animal, what would you be?
Definitely something aquatic. Probably. Maybe. It's quite difficult. Probably like a shark or something, just so I could just enjoy myself and not be too stressed about like being prey.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. I don't look to sharks as being like the most interesting, like or the creature that I think represents me. I just think it would be the most I want to say like ergonomic way to enjoy and like stress-free way to enjoy the wonders of the ocean. I love the ocean. Like this latest mix I'm putting together for the 12th Isle guys, shouts to Fergus, is very like aquatic leaning, let's say, or it's focused on that sort of thing. So
Nice.
I would say yeah, something that just allows me to enjoy the ocean without too much pesting. Yeah.
Favorite hobby outside of music?
I'm probably cooking, I would say, but like this is like all I really do. I don't consider this as being like a hobby or this being a thing that I'm outside of. I just do this. You could say there's like sub categories of how I enjoy it. Like I like sometimes uploading music stuff to YouTube, like ripping tapes and putting them on YouTube. I like writing a lot. Actually, I've got really into Letterboxd recently. Scott's really into Letterboxd as well, which is like this app. If you don't know Letterboxd, it's this movie reviewing app. So you just get on there, and I write these like pretty significant essay reviews on there. So I would say that's probably a hobby outside of music. It's pretty music. It's pretty music centric, but we're learning things here. I'm learning things here. I do have hobbies outside of music. Yeah, so that's probably it. Writing, I would say.
Love it.
Yeah.
Go-to karaoke song.
God, that's hard. I haven't done karaoke in a long time. I feel like Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love with You" is very like that's a. I feel like I don't think I can hit the high notes, so I think an Elvis song is good for me because he's got a pretty low voice. So I think that would probably be the one these days. I would probably look to.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's your biggest fear?
This is gonna get really like it's not gonna be like heights or spiders. Probably regret.
Yeah.
Probably I would say the fear of living a life not well lived, like not achieving what I want to achieve, not having as much of an impact as I would like to, not contributing as much as I'd like to. I would say, yeah, the regret of knowing I could have done more. So that's something I'm definitely, above all else, quite scared of.
It's a good one. Sunrise or sunset?
I'm gonna say sunset because I'm definitely a night person. I definitely chill out at night. Like I feel relaxed in the evening. If it wasn't for, I mean, I love the sun. I love I love the beach and things like that. But if it was healthy to do so, I could pretty happily live at night. I think be nocturnal. So I'm gonna say sunset purely because it leads into. I mean, it also leads into our world. You know, that's when we all begin. Is when the sun goes down. So as much as that's very cheesy to say, it's how it is. So.
It's your last set ever. What do you close with and why?
Yes, this is a big one. As I was talking to you about earlier, I have like, as we all do, we have so many tunes, but we were talking about playlists and things. I've got this one playlist of like 100 tunes, it's like all just like end of the world. Like this is the last tune ever tunes. But I think out of all of them, if it was like, I mean, when people say, you know, it's the last party on earth, part of me thinks this massive celebration and there's fireworks and everyone's hugging and it's great. And the other half thinks about this world that's just like, you know, the world, it's like 2012, the movie 2012. Yeah. It's like catastrophic natural disasters. And it's like the last
big tidal wave running through the city.
But I think the tune that would fit both of those scenarios to me is a tune called Hiders by Burial.
Nice.
It's like this just ridiculously... I mean, I hardly even have the words for it. It's like just such a world-endingly beautiful and also like sort of nostalgia-inducing. It's like 3 minutes of this like kind of 80s synthy melded thing, this like amalgamation, which is brilliant. The only thing is it doesn't go for very long, which I think is beautiful, but also I really do love closing a set with a tune that's like 9 minutes long that just builds, which is really lovely. But I would say if it had to be one, it would be Hiders by Burial. And you don't play the end because the end of it gets all dark, does that Burial thing where at the end he decides to throw some darker ambient stuff in at the end. So you just cut it off before that little dip, and it's amazing.
That's it.
That's the one.
Well done. That wraps up the amazing chat that we just had.
That's it. God, it feels like it's flown.
Yeah, definitely.
So many things we didn't even get to
touch on. As I said, round 2, if you're up for it.
I would love to do it. I mean, I'm sure you've got many talented and knowledge burdened. I don't want to say burdened. People with a lot of knowledge who have some wonderful things to share that could come on here and could occupy that session. But if there is a spot, I would love to do round 2 because I feel like there's so much we didn't get to touch on. So,
for sure. Yeah. And as I said, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been so nice to sit down with you. And
no, thank you. It's been so amazing. As I say, this is, to me, it's quickly become a real, in a way, a real institution of a platform, and something that I've, you know, from I guess the start of this whole thing, really wanted to be a part of. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to be doing it. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words. Big love.
Always.